Like so many other people, I've been really feeling the pinch of food inflation lately, and after my grocery spending kept growing week after week, I finally faced the music and I buckled down and ultimately cut my grocery spending almost in half over a period of a few months. And I shared some ways I did this in a recent short. Got a lot of questions from that short, so I wanted to sit down and make a full video to really go into more detail, really breaking down how I've been able to really cut back our grocery spending without coupon clipping or obsessing over weekly sales, but still being able to eat what I consider to be a fairly healthy and balanced diet. Okay, I want to start with just a quick disclaimer here. I'm going to share things that I have done to cut my grocery budget. I'm not saying that my methods are going to be a copy and paste for you. Everyone has different families, lifestyles, dietary needs, household budgets, live in different areas, but I do think you can take away a lot of practices or methods or tips from what I've done and find ways to apply them to your own grocery shopping and meal planning. All right, let's do this. Okay, so the number one thing I did was really set myself up to be successful when it came to spending, and that was by getting honest and realistic with myself. If I wanted to spend less at the grocery store, I was gonna have to get less. It's just basic math. Less equals less. And that seems like a really basic concept, but sort of a hard pill to swallow. We get really used to a certain level of lifestyle or living, right? I mean, that's essentially what lifestyle inflation is. I had to accept that I was going to have to thin this out if I wanted to spend less. So the first thing I did was really work on prioritizing what my most important items were. This meant looking at like what are my must-haves and my non-negotiables. For me, high quality dairy and meat was top of my list. I was maybe willing to get like a more generic or mass-produced like baking good or frozen fruit or canned good, or getting a banana that like wasn't organic if it meant that I could have higher quality meats and dairy. I guess I should just mention at this point that if you're gonna be successful with your groceries, you need to have a set budget. I kind of just assumed that people would have one, but as I'm saying this, I realized that maybe some people don't. You might have just saw save money on groceries, you clicked the video, and you didn't really do that. You gotta have a weekly budget to keep you on track, and you have to have a goal to work on. As I'm making my list and filling my cart, I need to have a set amount so I don't go over. That's what keeps you in check, and that's sort of what forces you to be honest and sort of like make the compromises that need to be made. And on that note, I've gotten into the habit of doing almost all my grocery shopping as an online order. And there is a reason, and that's because I find it 300 times easier to keep track of my spending this way. Unlike when you actually go into the grocery store where you're distracted, probably in a rush, maybe wrangling your kids with you, you get tempted by sales and end-capped items. When you order online on a grocery store app, you can take your time. Take breaks to Google the difference in foods, compare prices to see if something's better. And most importantly, you can always see an exact tally of your cart as you go. Now, even this is a compromise for me. Like I said, the first and most important step is getting honest and realistic. Where I live, we have about 2 grocery stores within a 10-minute radius. The one I like best doesn't do online pickup. But if I shop there every week, I will without a doubt go over my budget. All right, the second thing that really has helped me with my grocery budget is being really strict about meal planning. Now, I've been pretty disciplined about doing meal planning for about 2 years now, but it has proven to be an absolute necessity when it comes to sticking to a budget. This involves writing up the meals for the whole week, assigning a meal to each day of the week, and then sticking to that like my life depends on it. This is your meal Bible for the week now. If Tuesday comes and I don't want to eat that meal, I just suck it up. I eat it and I don't plan that meal again for next week because I obviously didn't really want it. Because if we don't stick with what we planned and what we bought for, we'll end up one, spending money on some other food to eat that night, and worse over, the food that I had bought for that meal now doesn't have a purpose or a set meal for it to be used for, and most likely some of it's going to get bad or not used. So basically I'm just throwing money away. Now, when I meal plan, I take a look obviously at what I already have to use. So I try to plan a meal or two around what's already in the kitchen. Maybe I have some chicken left from last week. I take stock of what I've got and aim to use up things I have, ideally things that are gonna go bad in the next week. Once I've done that, some of my other meal planning tips are that we always do at least one meatless meal a week. But the point here is that meat is quite pricey, especially if you do prefer higher quality meats when you can. So by using other protein sources like beans and legumes, it can be a really cheap swap. And when the budget is extra tight, 1 week, we always throw in breakfast for dinner. We usually do scrambled eggs, maybe sausage if we have it, some avocado or some toast, or even just do cereal if we're like extra budget friendly that week. Sure, it's not all that exciting, but I have found mixing in some less exciting meals through the week doesn't actually bother us as long as we're not doing like all unexciting meals. It's sort of this balance of like throwing a few sort of boring, really cheap meals, have a few meals that are like not as boring, and it kind of like balances out, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's repeating the same variations of things, but doing it a little bit different than throwing in some new things 1 or 2 times a week. Okay, moving on from meal planning, I think one of the next best things I've done to help lower my budget is to get informed. Over the past 5 to 8 years, I've become fairly informed on food and ingredients. I'm no nutritionist by any means, but I have spent a lot of time learning about food and learning how to read food labels, understand what it actually means, like what's in the food that I'm buying. I'm not here to like fearmonger you about food at all, because I do think that happens with food stuff at excess, but certainly there are a lot of foods out there full of stuff that they don't really need, right? I think we all know that. So just taking some time to learn how to flip my container around and read the back, like to look at the ingredients and just make informed decisions that way. So let me give you a few quick examples. Okay, so here's an example. I am looking for peanut butter, clicking on Teddy's peanut butter, and when I scroll down to ingredients, I just see that it's peanuts, right? Some salt, and that is it. So just as a comparison, I saw that Skippy was the next one available, and when I scroll down and look at ingredients here, you can see there's all sorts of extra stuff mixed in, hydrogenated oil and sugar. So just like as a really quick glance, I can see which one is the better choice, and then I could do my price comparing and sort of make the best choice for me. The other day I was buying bacon, and man, the prices of bacon vary so much. Like some bacon's $3 and some bacon $13. I couldn't figure it out. So I took a little detour on Google because I was ordering online so I could, because I wanted to learn the difference between cured and uncured bacon. I'm sitting there trying to choose the right bacon, and I don't even know what these words mean, right? And I found out that cured meat uses artificial preservatives, while uncured meat uses natural preservatives, typically celery, oddly enough. So you can see how just being a little bit informed can help you make choices when shopping. It's easy to default and say, oh, this one's $10 and this one's only $7, so the $10 one must be better, but it's not always true. Now on that note, as you get more informed, you are going to learn that a lot of stuff does have extra stuff in it that it doesn't need. And sometimes getting the products that are free of extra stuff or more clean is going to cost you more, so you gotta find a balance. Like I said, there's a lot of fear-mongering in the food world, so try not to over-obsess about it either. If you buy the less clean pasta sauce that's weak, it's really not that big of a deal. Give yourself some grace and balance. But something I've started doing that actually works for me a lot, I've started making a lot of things at home that I never really thought to make at home. Like I said, not everything in this video is going to be for everybody. You might not have the bandwidth to be doing this right now. I'm just sharing what we have done, but I've started making like my own almond milk, a lot of my own condiments and dressings, a good majority of our breads. And yes, it is more time consuming than just taking it off the shelf, but I actually have found it's not that much more time consuming as I thought. Lots of times I'll make a big batch of ciabatta rolls on Sunday. I keep them in the freezer for the week. It takes less than 5 minutes to whip up some ranch dressing because it really is a lot more affordable, and for me, I find it a lot more healthy, and it doesn't actually take me that much more time. All right, the last thing that I want to touch on about getting strict with my food budget is one of the biggest perks, besides of course saving money and like staying on your budget and not overspending, and that is reducing food waste. There's nothing worse than spending money on something just to throw it away. And when I got really strict about my budget, I was obviously bringing less into my house. I think like one of the biggest differences was just like there was so much less in our fridge because we were just buying what we needed, that at first it kind of felt like, oh my God, there's like no food in our fridge, but there was still plenty for us to eat. Do you know what I mean? I just got a lot better about saving leftovers and using leftovers in creative ways. If I only used half an onion for a meal, I saved that other half and I found a way to incorporate it in another meal. We've also got a lot more creative about making meals. There have been a lot of times where maybe it was like a Saturday and we didn't know what we were gonna have for lunch. In the past, we would have run out to the store and got something, but now we'll step back, we look at what we have available in the kitchen, and 95% of the time, we have what we need to make a meal. So we just end up being a lot more conscious and creative with what's in our fridge and using everything up. All right, to finish off this video, I wanna say that even with all of this that I've shared that has helped me a lot, it's still really hard to stick to a budget. It just is. It's hard not to get splurges or just because items, but at the end of the day, I keep my ultimate financial goals in mind. I love the quote, do you want to feel rich or be rich? And it's kind of that idea. I can feel rich with my grocery shopping. I can get things out of my budget or I can be strict and actually make financial progress, whatever that is for you, whether it's paying off debt or creating savings or paying off your house. Like I always say, it's discipline now or regret later. So even with all of these tips, budgeting is still hard. It's still hard to like stick to the budget and not get splurges all the time. But I always keep that, whatever your ultimate financial goal is, in mind, because that will really keep you motivated. All right, my friends, that does it. I hope this helps a little bit, sharing some ways that I have been cutting back my food spending over the last few months that aren't some of your typical like clip coupons and buy with the seasons and buy generic, which are all good tips. But I wanted to sort of give a more holistic look at some of the ways that we have been doing it. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and others, and I will see you all in my next video.